Happy Monday, good afternoon. Coming in for a quick pop in. Normally I'm here on Tuesdays, but tomorrow I've got stuff. And I wanted to make sure I was able to get in and chat with you all today. So, as you can see, I'm in a different background. Excuse me. And I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind for a while, and that is um, this whole concept of um, the fact that the system is made of people, like the cells make up a body. Now, if you're a parent or an auntie or an uncle or in proximity with any child, you probably have heard this song that everybody sings, We Don't Talk About Bruno. We don't talk about Bruno. Oh, oh, oh. We don't talk about Bruno. So what's interesting about this is it seems as though there's a phenomenon that happens in our community about what we don't talk about. Really, that's just a metaphor for the things that we avoid talking about. And so, as most of you probably, if you follow me, you know that I traffic in this world of diversity, equity, inclusion. Particularly in my area is dealing with the unconscious mind and the tools to be able to um, really learn communication and bridge that gap of what happens after you learn about bias. And in conversation with several of my colleagues who are in health equity, who are in DEI, there has been this conversation amongst us about this gap, that happens when organizations want to, and now I think there's a lot of mandate for unconscious bias training, which valid, right? But then that box checking behavior happens, and it's like, oh, we've checked the box and we're done. And then there are organizations that go take it further, and they're very committed to health equity, right? And I think that's it's perfect because this is in medicine specifically when we talk about the impact of bias, the impact of marginalized communities is it shows up in health disparities. And so there's in medicine this big focus towards health equity. And in non-medical communities, there's again this focus towards bias. But the problem that I've been seeing has been coming up in a lot of conversations is number one, a lot of organizations want to stop after um, the unconscious bias training. They want to stop at that, or um, wanting to focus on projects rather than the people work, the projects, and shifting the systems, which is valid. The system has to be changed in order for big change to happen. But the problem comes when the people who are doing the work are not invested in doing the work within themselves. And while I think this is contradictory to the effectiveness of our work in DEI, is because if you don't, the system that has to be changed is made up of people who are running the system. And if the people who are running the system are taking just this sort of blanketed action or blind action or dissociated action, then at the end of the day, it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable if the people are in the organization are not doing the work. Just take, for instance, and I liken it to our bodies. And of course, I liken it to our bodies because I'm a physician. If you look at an organ system, or let's just take the body as a whole, if you have failure of a major organ system, let's say the liver, then the body cannot sustain itself. Toxins build up because we know that the liver, it's highly responsible for filtering out toxins out of the body. If you have a failure of the liver, then you die. If you have a failure of the renal system, of the kidneys, in any capacity, and it's not remedied, it's not managed, then the body cannot sustain itself. If you have a failure of the heart to pump blood through the system, then the body can't sustain itself. If you have failure of the lungs to take in oxygen and to perfuse oxygen into the body, then you have a failure system. My point being is that in the system of the body, the organs must be maintained and work together to be able to work together in order for the full system to work. Now, if we even take it down even further to the micro level, to the cellular level, when you begin to have cell dysfunction, let's say cell dysfunction inside of the vessels, you can have leaking of the vessels, you can have swelling, or we call edema. If you have dysfunction of too many of the cells of the liver, then what is that going to do? It's going to cause the liver to fail. What's that going to do? Cause the system to be disrupted. If you have a tumor or a cancer that is growing inside of any organ, then what it does is it starts to affect the organ's function. So again, even at the cellular level, the cells must be functional, optimally functional, to have an organ work, to have a system work. And so why would that be any different in an organization where you have a system, that needs to be changed? And if the cells of the system are not, even if they're performing, if they're not actually doing the work to be performing from a space of value, from a space where it's their values, eventually that's empty action and it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. And so this is one of the reasons why I really feel that people work is so necessary. And it's not just about learning and gaining insight. It's about gaining skills and tools, right? And I could take this into any area of life, into parenting, knowing that yelling at your kids is not the most effective way to communicate. Doesn't make a difference until you learn the skills of communication to actually do something different. Knowing that you need to lose weight and it's going to take increasing your physical activity and decreasing or managing your nutrient intake. Knowing that makes no difference unless you have the knowledge and the skills. And this is what I used to teach when I was in clinical medicine. The knowledge and the skills of how to prepare, cook, what to choose, how to shop, how to plan meals, how to prep meals. So the people work is not just about insight. I think that many times way people view this sort of deep inner work is woo. And I don't even know who decided what was woo, who decided what is soft skills. That's what they call those. They used to call them, which now I think are called essential skills. And while they're called essential skills, they're not treated as essential skills. But the deeper work that bridges the gap between learning about something like unconscious bias and then actually knowing where to apply that, how to actually take that information and have it impact the work that you do on the court in real time. That's the actual people work. And by and large, for organizations and healthcare institutions who have implemented their programs and are not seeing results, is the missing step, the missing link. and what has something not be sustainable or not create the best possible outcomes. And I've seen that. I've seen organizations who have pursued the people work who are having sustainable outcomes because they're doing the work of emotional intelligence and learning the communication skills, learning how to reframe and listen in a different kind of way, learning how to step into another's perspective and shoes before reacting, learning to lengthen the gap between reaction and response. And so, like the cells needing to all work together and function and be fed. So here's the other piece about the cells, right? Cells will function, and they'll function how they'll function, whether you're pouring in the good stuff or the bad stuff, until they don't. So if you're, a person is largely eating junk food, fatty food, high sugar, putting toxins from cigarettes into their body and other substances into their body, it affects the cell function. Cells can't function optimally. When you shift that and you begin to eat plant-based, eat clean, eliminate the bad habits, manage the stress, then the inflammation that would be caused by unhealthy behavior will go down, and the cells will function optionally, and the body will function more optionally, and it makes a difference in how the person as a whole feels, how the culture, right? So in an organization, when you have people who are actually doing the internal work, they're feeding themselves something differently. They're feeding themselves a different kind of internal talk, self-talk, which manifests in their outer behavior, their outer conversations, in their motivation and their values. And when you have multiple people doing that, and they're putting then their focus on a task like DEI, justice and belonging, right? Like mitigating harm for that happens out of bias and racism, like improving health equity. When you have people who are feeding themselves a different kind of message, skills, tools, not only do they gain a resilience for the discomfort of these types of conversations, but they also take new tools into their daily interactions, which affects the work and affects the engagement and affects overall the culture. And that is what creates sustainability, because one's mind begins to think differently about the work, rather there being such resistance or doing something out of obligation or doing something out of mandate. When you start to look at the people work, then you start to create something that's more sustainable down the line, that's sustainable beyond a position one person's position or two people's position that's carrying the load of this work that's being done. So that's really all I wanted to say today. I want to pop in because I feel like that people are always asking me, what's my role? What's my role? What's the role of the work that I do? And I can explain it 1,000 times. But I thought that metaphor of the cells and the organs of the body working together, I thought that metaphor, I think that metaphor really paints a picture of why this work matters, why the work of the unconscious mind matters, why giving people the skills of communication matter, conflict resolution, emotional intelligence, why that matters. And so if you have questions about that, you know what to do. You can reach out to me directly. Have questions about what I do, reach out to me directly. I hope this has been insightful, but more than insightful enough to have you really consider where that gap is in your processes. Because if we continue to do the same thing over and over, why should we expect any different results? All right. You can reach me at mindremappingacademy.com. You can reach me by emailing me. You can reach me by direct messaging me. And so you all have a wonderful rest of the day and a wonderful rest of the week. Namaste.